Uh, Hello everyone, we're back again with James, and that is, we've been talking about James. First and foremost, James, warm welcome once again.
Thank you.
So, we've been talking about transits, we've been talking about transits of Jupiter, Saturn, and Uranus, and what more. While we're talking on transit, his book or the transits that he'd written so many years ago is now available as an ebook. James, can we have a look at the book, please?
Yeah, it's actually Western transits and a whole section on the dashas and bhuktis. It's called How to Predict Your Future: Secrets of Eastern and Western Astrology. This is when I was younger. I was very young. Anyway, it's an ebook now. It's a big book. It's on ebook. It's about 900 pages. And it goes through the transits of Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto through all 12 houses. Then it goes through the transits of Pluto conjuncting the Sun, Pluto squaring the Moon, Pluto trining. And Jupiter, all those planets making those aspects. It's very, very thorough. And so the place to buy the book, you can buy ebooks anywhere, but what helps me the most is if you buy it from www.store.bookbaby.com. Store.bookbaby.com. That's the best.
And I will also be putting it in the description so that none of you miss out on the book. James, we've done the 6 houses, and for those who have not seen the 6 houses earlier, most of you will have, because James is a very loved personality on the channel. So if you haven't, please do see that. It's an interesting take there. And he also talks about one of the conjunctions that's going to come up pretty soon in the year 2020. So James, covering the 6 houses, as you said, that the keywords that we can now associate, or so I make out, with at least Uranus is being a volatile planet, and that being a psychic planet, a planet that gives you a lot of independence, and whichever house it travels, it gives that person these kind of qualities.
It rules electricity. When Uranus was discovered was when electricity came about.
Okay.
Saturn, for the last month, has been exactly opposite my Uranus.
Okay.
And Uranus is electricity, and I have had all kinds of electrical problems from this. All kinds of electrical problems. Anyway, yeah, Uranus is volatile, it's up and down, it's exciting, it's freedom and independence. It's very fascinating planet. Okay, so Jupiter through the 7th house. The year that Jupiter goes through the 7th house is very good for marriage and any partnerships, not just marriage, but partnerships in general is very good for that. It's also very good for business, because the 7th house is not just the marriage partner, it's other people. So other people treat you well, you have good dealings with other people, interacting with people for buying and selling is very good. But the one thing that I always mention, I've said this a million times on YouTube, but I'm going to say it again. I see many more divorces when Jupiter transits the 7th house than I do with Saturn. Saturn through the 7th house makes the person work on the marriage, unless it's a horrible marriage and it just ends. But when Jupiter goes through the 7th house, it's generally good for relationships and marriage. However, if you've been living in a bad marriage for a long time, Jupiter goes in the 7th house, and you're driving in your car and you see people staring at you because they're attracted to you. And you see opportunities for love, and you see opportunities for relationship, and you say, why am I stuck in this horrible marriage when there's all these people out here looking at me wanting to be with me? So seriously, it causes a lot of divorces. It's a very simple transit. It's about love and marriage and partnerships and happiness with other people. That's basically it. There's not much else that I would say about it. Saturn in the 7th house is very important. When Saturn transits the 7th house, any problems that are in the partnership that you're in will show up. the partner will let you know what they don't like. Hey, you know, I don't like this. And then you get to work on it. If you've been living with things in the marriage that you don't like, that's the time that you get to work on it. You wake up every day thinking about your marriage. When Saturn's transiting the seventh house, you're always thinking about it. Now, here's the thing. Many people are single, and Saturn transits the seventh house. Saturn represents commitment, so it's possible to get married, but it's not real. It's not a real strong percentage. What happens is this. The person is single. Saturn begins transiting the seventh house, and suddenly that person will feel pressured to focus on why they're not married or what the problems are that is making it so that they don't attract other people. So most people live their lives waiting for bells to go off. They're waiting for love at first sight, and it's not happening. So when Saturn goes into the seventh house, that's the time when you realize, you know something? I want to be married. I want a partner. What do I have to do to make that happen? So that's when you begin taking responsibility for it. And if you don't do that, then if you don't do something, if you don't start going to dances or going on meeting people, or this is the time to go into therapy. This is the time to go into counseling and say, look, every time I get involved with somebody, I have the same terrible patterns. The same pattern comes up and the same problems come up. This is the time you go to therapy. One of the things that's very typical, the person that has a very bad track history in relationships with the same kind of pattern coming up, Saturn will go into the seventh house and they fall massively in love. Oh my God, I'm so in love. And of course, because they're not really healthy, the same pattern comes up and it's terrible. Only this time they can't just walk away because the commitment, when they got into the relationship, it was made with such a commitment that they can't walk away, but the relationship doesn't work. And they want it so badly because it's so great, but it doesn't work. So it throws them into therapy. It forces them to go into counseling and therapy to work on their relationship. If the person's been, I've had a lot of people who say, well, I've been thinking about divorce for the last 2 years. I've been thinking about divorce for the last 6 months. Then if Saturn goes into the seventh house, it's over. They say, I can't do it anymore. Because when Saturn gets in there, what happens is, in the years before Saturn is there, they know the marriage is no good, but they don't have the cold-heartedness to cut it off. They don't have the discipline to cut it off. Saturn gets in the seventh house and they go, I can't do it, I'm done. They can't, the discipline is there to say, I've got to get rid of it. And so that happens. But I wouldn't predict divorce for Saturn transiting the seventh unless the marriage is really, really bad. Okay? It's not a good, it's not a, what?
Like you did with your handyman.
Yeah, like that. Exactly. I'm done. There's a phrase in Arabic. My parents were from Aleppo, and the phrase is called khalasna, khalasna. That means finish. So yeah. So Saturn through the seventh house is really an important transit. And remember this, do not enter any relationship lightly. So I warn a single person. I say, if you're gonna get together with somebody, before you become intimate, before you get very committed, you better make sure that that person is a good person. Because once you get involved, you can't get out. You can't walk away easily. And then you have problems if the person is not a good person. Okay. But remember this, any partnership that you get into when Saturn's transiting the seventh house, I remember I got into some, it was just, I don't know, it was like doing some astrology workshop or conference, and I agreed to do it with this guy, and then it was such a hassle. It was so difficult dealing with this person because it had been made during the Saturn through the seventh. So watch out for partnerships at that time. But during that transit, that's all you'll think about every day. That's all you'll think about is relationships. Uranus in the 7th house is very interesting. When Uranus hits that 7th house cusp, if that relationship is not stable and good, etc., it will burst, it will break, like electricity will break it. That's if the relationship's not good. And if that happens, where Uranus gets into the 7th house and suddenly the wife tells you, I'm in love with someone else, or I want to go live somewhere, whatever it is, when that happens, what you must remember is that because it's Uranus, you have no control over the situation. All the power is in the hands of the partner. All the power is in their hands. So you can't control the situation. You can only control how you react. Now, for those 7 years, there will be a lot more excitement in your marriage. The marriage partner may become metaphysical or spiritual. The marriage partner may become unstable. The marriage partner may become independent. The marriage partner may start to love astrology. There's all these exciting things. And the marriage will never be the same again. When Uranus gets in there, the relationship gets more exciting, more up and down and interesting, assuming it's a good, decent relationship. And for those 7 years, because the 7th house is a public house, it's other people, you will meet people that are specifically into astrology, metaphysics, out of the ordinary, but you'll also meet people that are unstable or crazy. So you just have to be a little cautious.
That's a good one. So we need to be stay away. So James, another question here. I think I should be asking. We know that we're going to meet such people. So being cautious, being aware, does it help that kind of a situation?
No, not much. Not with Uranus, because with Uranus, you have no control. The other person has the control. If Uranus goes into the 5th house and suddenly your children are acting weird or strange and you think you're going to be able to say, okay, let's do it like this. No, they're going to do what they want. This is Uranus. You have no control over Uranus. The purpose of Uranus is to break things up. It's to break the monotony. It's to interject independence. It's to interject excitement, electricity.
Okay.
Yeah. So Jupiter through the 8th house is very good for, like I said in the last meeting, Jupiter is going into my 8th house, and now the insurance company has to give me some money for my kitchen because there was a leak. So now money's coming in. But before this, for 2 years, money was going out for a lawsuit that was a frivolous lawsuit, and money was going out. That was the 8th house. Lawsuits are 6th house. But this was not about the lawsuit. This was about all the money we had to give away for a frivolous suit, money from unearned means. So when Jupiter goes into the 8th house by transit, you've got 1 year. Money comes in without having to work for it. Not for everybody. Look, most people don't have any means where money's going to come in like that. But if you're going through a divorce, if a person's going through a divorce and they want to know, when should I do it? If there's alimony or, where you have to split the money, I tell people, don't do this when Saturn's transiting your 8th. You won't get much money. If Jupiter's going into the 8th, that's a time when you can do it, and then you'll get a good settlement from the partner. So money comes in from insurance companies, wills, legacies, insurance companies, etc. It's also good for transformation. The 8th house is like a Scorpio house, and so the 8th house has to do with suffering because of attachment. Suffering comes from attachment. If I lose my money and I'm really attached to the money, the suffering's big. If I don't care about money and I lose the money, it doesn't matter. So the 8th, you can, when Jupiter's going through the 8th house, you can work on the attachments that you have, getting rid of them so that there's less suffering. It's also good for actually sexual enjoyment and things like that. It's extremely good. For that year, I tell people, I say, go visit psychics, go visit astrologers, go study astrology. It's a good time for that. Learn the tarot, things like that. It's basically good for money that comes in, and it's good for money with credit cards, money with mortgages. If you need to borrow money from the bank, that's when you go, when Jupiter's transiting the eighth. When Saturn goes in the eighth, when Saturn went into my eighth house, within a week or two, one of my credit card companies said, oh, we have to lower your credit. They lowered the credit. They lowered it. I hadn't had that happen in I don't know how long. I don't know if I'd ever had it happen. But so you have troubles with mortgages, troubles with banks, troubles with credit cards, the sexual enjoyment.
Inheritances, because you just said in the last episode.
Inheritances, yeah.
Frivolous lawsuit with the stepson of your brother, deceased brother.
Yeah, but that's a rare thing. That actually happened because I was in a Mercury bhukti, and Mercury is in the sixth house. So during Mercury in the sixth, the lawsuit came up. And then because Saturn was going through the eighth, the guy was eating up our money, thinking that we would settle with him. I wasn't going to settle with him because why should I? It cost me more, but why should I reward the guy for doing that? You know, he just keeps doing it. He keeps suing people. Anyway, so Saturn through the eighth is bad for other people's money, banks, mortgages, money coming in. It's not such a good transit for that. It can also bring up, it can cause problems with suffering. Saturn, when it goes to the eighth house, is pressuring you. It's letting you suffer over the things you're attached to so that you can focus on them and say, why am I attached to this? Why do I care about this area? But then you have to do something about it. Otherwise, it's painful. Uranus through the eighth house, that can bring funerals. That can bring knowledge of life after death, knowledge about funerals. This doesn't mean, oh, a loved one's going to die. Now, it could mean that if you have a planet in the eighth house and it hits that planet, it's possible. But mainly, for those 7 years, you're going to be learning about astral experiences. You may have some astral experiences. You may have big intuition. There could be ups and downs with banks or mortgages or credit card companies or things like that. You know, but there could also be money that suddenly comes in.
Yeah.
So it's all of these different things. But honestly, the most important in my opinion. Now, for some people, it's going to be the money they're going to consider that most important. I would say what's most important is when Uranus goes in that eighth house. You have seven. When Uranus goes in that eighth house, you have 7 years to absolutely look at the things that are causing you suffering because of attachment. And because it's Uranus, it becomes easier. Not Saturn is more difficult, but when Uranus is there, it becomes easy to let go. It becomes easier to say, you know what, that's causing me too much suffering. All right, you take it. I don't want it. I don't want that desire is over with. I don't want that desire. It causes too much suffering. So it's actually really good spiritually, because the more attachments you get rid of, the more free you will be. Okay. The eighth house is also, thank you. The eighth house is also, because it's a Scorpio house, it's a house of intense desire, which is why the suffering is coming. When Uranus transited my eighth house, I remember I was younger and I would wake up with some big desires. And then a week later, they were gone. And it was disconcerting, because I would get a desire to write a book or to do something big, and I couldn't hold on to the desires because Uranus is volatile and up and down. And I thought, oh, I have this great project I want to do. And a week later, it would be gone. It was just very odd, but it's very up and down. But it's a really good transit for astrology and psychic and metaphysical. It's wonderful for that. But you also may be invited to funerals. You may be learning about life after death. You may be learning about the death experience, all of that. Okay. The ninth house, Jupiter through the ninth house is wonderful for going to visit gurus and mentors and spiritual teachers. It's wonderful for going to colleges and universities. It's the quintessential placement for travel for 12 months. Travel, higher knowledge, religion, philosophy. It also, of course, can be good for dealings with the father. I have come to the conclusion that to analyze the father, you have to look at the ninth house and Jupiter, and you have to look at the 10th house and Saturn. I just don't think that it's one or the other. I think you have to look at both. So that's a very nice transit. Saturn through the ninth house, especially when you're young, it forces you to look at what you believe in and look at your religion and your gurus. Now, no matter what you're doing, when Saturn goes through that ninth house, you're going to see the flaws of your guru. You're going to see the flaws of your religion. You're going to see the flaws in that whole area. They will pop up during that time. The purpose of the transit is for you to look at religion and philosophy with a critical eye and decide what it is that you believe in, because you're going along believing in a certain religion, believing this or that, and suddenly Saturn goes into the ninth house and you go, wait a minute. Karma doesn't make any sense, because we were living our lives, there was no karma, and then somebody did something bad, now they had bad karma. Well, why'd they do something bad? This doesn't make any sense. So you start to get critical of this.
That's what I was going to ask you. I was just going to ask you, do we end up getting critical about our higher knowledge or about gurus or somebody? Do we get critical about,
yes,
about gurus or higher knowledge or things like that? We are
the whole purpose of it is to get you to, the whole purpose of Saturn transits is to get you to focus and concentrate and not take things for granted, to be more serious. So you start to get serious about religion and philosophy, and you say, wait a minute, is karma really perfect? And souls are being reincarnated, but wait a minute, 2,000 years ago, there was 1 million people on the earth. Now there's 6 billion. Where do these new souls come from? So you get more critical.
Yes.
Like that. But you have to remember, if you're going to visit religious gurus and teachers and things like that, and you think you're going to have fun, it's not going to be so much fun. And if there's a planet in the ninth house and Saturn hits that planet, it's really not going to be so much fun during the time when Saturn is 1 degree before, 1 degree with, and 1 degree after that planet. Now with travel, so I used to go back and forth to Switzerland doing horoscope readings. And for me, it was a vacation because Switzerland was fantastic. I'd do some work and then we'd go have fun. So I went there one time, and this is the 3rd time I was there. I was expecting a really fun time, but Saturn was transiting my 9th house. It was not fun. The person that brought me there, that was always taking me all over the place, he had problems. So he was busy most of the time. It just wasn't fun. And there can be obstacles, there can be delays, there can be problems with travel. So I don't want to travel. So if you have to travel in the next 3 years, and Capricorn is your 9th house, Capricorn is my 9th house. So Saturn will be in Capricorn 2020, 21, 22. I don't want to travel at that point. I don't want to go see gurus at that point. I don't want to deal with universities at that point. But when Jupiter is in Capricorn with Saturn, and by the way, I don't care that Jupiter is in a bad sign at that point, or that Saturn's in a good sign in its own sign. That's, to me, I've not seen that be accurate. I mean, natally is different, but in the transits, I don't think so. So Jupiter will be in Capricorn in my 9th, April, May, June of 2020, I can go travel. November 2020 to April 2021, I can go travel. September, October, November 2021, Jupiter's with Saturn in the 9th, I can go travel. But otherwise, those things would not be favored. Now, if you have a lawsuit, or you want to bring a lawsuit, or you want to do anything with lawyers and judges, Not when Saturn's transiting the ninth, if you can help it. When Jupiter is transiting the ninth, the lawyers and the judges may favor you. Okay.
Right.
Uranus, 7 years of Uranus through the ninth house, that's going to be very good for higher knowledge, travel, a lot of higher knowledge. And you may meet gurus during those 7 years that also do astrology and metaphysical. Most gurus are just into mysticism and enlightenment, moksha. But when Uranus goes through the ninth, you may meet gurus that are very different, very, like Rajneesh was eclectic all over the place. He did all kinds of strange things. If Uranus was going through your ninth house, then you could meet a guru like that, someone who does weird things like that. But there'd be a lot of travel, a lot of higher knowledge, things like that. It's possible that there could be something going on with your father up and down or something like that. But it's a pretty straightforward transit.
I'm telling you, James, I'm very sure after listening to you on this Uranus transit also, because Saturn and Jupiter transit we are so used to throughout, but Uranus is something new. So even the people in Vedic astrology, they're simply going to open their chart and see which house is Uranus transiting for them. Oh.
Yeah. In the book, I actually talk about Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto going through all the houses, but I don't want to overload. Just slowly start with Uranus.
That's a good one. Yeah. So give it to them by bits and pieces so that they get it.
Exactly. So Jupiter through the 10th house, you get to be the center of attention.
Right.
Now, you can't, like I say, I always call Jupiter Santa Claus. It promises a lot, but it doesn't always deliver. But it will deliver a certain amount of luck. It doesn't mean that you necessarily get promotions and awards. It doesn't necessarily mean that. It's too simple of a planet. It's a fun planet. But during that year, Jupiter through the 10th, you'll be favored. You'll feel like you're appreciated in the career area. There's some luck there. If you're going to ask for a promotion, Jupiter through the 1st or Jupiter through the 10th is the time to do it. They might give it to you. But that's a very nice.
You could be enjoying your work, promotion or no promotion, you could be literally enjoying whatever you're doing. That would also happen.
That's true. But the 10th house is mostly about status, how the world sees you. So that's going to be the biggest influence. There's no question. You're going to be happy. When Jupiter's in your 10th, you're going to enjoy your work. You're going to enjoy it and enjoy the career. But that's when you can be favored and promoted. But don't expect too much from Jupiter transits. But it's definitely a good year, no question. And it's definitely good for father. And it's also good, I don't know why, but it's also good for visiting temples, for travel to temples and things like that. Of course, the 9th house transits will be very good for visiting temples, but there's something about the 10th house to travel from temple to temple, I don't know, is favored for some reason. But Saturn through the 10th house, I like this transit a lot. The 10th house, the natural karaka or indicator of the 10th house is Saturn. So the career is the 10th house, and Saturn is a career planet. They're connected. So when Saturn transits the 10th house, normally there's always problems when Saturn transits a house. When Saturn transits the 10th house, it's very karmic. So you get the karma back from what you've been doing for 10 or 20 years. So if you're in a particular career, even if you're in the career, but you change, you've been in the career for 20 years, but you do the career this way, and you do it that way, and you do it that way, as long as it's the same career, in those 2.5 years, Saturn will absolutely give you the karma back for the efforts you put in. It won't be instantaneous. It'll be within those 2.5 years. You'll get a bigger organization. You'll get bigger administrative abilities. Your influence will be bigger, slowly as the 2.5 years go by. By the time the 2.5 years is over, you'll see that you've deepened and widened your career. You've affected more amount of people. But I never recommend starting a new career right before that. Now, many times Many times people are in the wrong career. And when Saturn gets up to the 10th house, they realize, I don't like this career. I've got to change. That's fine. That's good. But I have to say, don't expect any rewards. You haven't put in any effort in this area. So lay the groundwork for the new career. And then when it's over, so sometimes people will say, you know what, I want to wait. I'm going to suffer for another year or two to get more money or to get something done, and then I'll make the change. Sometimes they do that. Okay. I don't see much more than that. If there's a very afflicted 10th house, like if a person has a very weak 10th house, say that in the natal Hindu chart, say that the 10th house ruler is fallen. Say that in the dasamsha, in the career house, in the career chart, the 10th house ruler is in the 8th or 12th house. There's nothing good. In those cases where the natal 10th house is really bad, Saturn goes into that 10th house and transits it. They get karma back from past lives. In other words, they don't do anything wrong, and in those 2.5 years, there's a scandal, there's a collapse, there's a,
you call it, they have it kind of a situation.
yeah, it's karmic, but that's only if the 10th house is very bad natally. They get their karma back from past lives. It's terrible. But if the 10th house is average or okay or good, I like that transit. That being said, there are certain houses that when Saturn is transiting them, it's all you can think about. When Saturn's transiting the 2nd house, all you can think about is money. When Saturn's aspecting the 7th house, all you can think about is marriage and partnerships. When Saturn's aspecting the 10th house, all you can think about is career. In the other houses, you're having troubles in the 6th house work, you're having troubles with home and family. It's not on your mind all the time. Saturn through the 10th house, it's on your mind all the time. It's all you can think about. Uranus in the 10th house is similar to Uranus in the 6th house, change of job. This could be a change of career. It's possible. The main thing is, in the career now, you have to have independence. You have to do what you've always wanted to do. If you've had something you've always wanted to do as a career, this is different from the 6th house. That's just a job in the 6th. This is the career. I've always wanted to be my own boss. I've always wanted to be selling ice cream. Whatever it is, that's the time to do it. The career can also be up and down, volatile. You could do 3 or 4 different careers in that period, like that. And Uranus through the 10th house could be a change in your father's well-being or in the relationship with the father. If the father's old and Uranus goes into that 10th house, it can be bad for the father. Same with Uranus going through the 4th. If the mother's very old, Uranus through the 4th isn't going to help anything. Jupiter through the 11th house, you get new friends, new groups, and the friends that you've been enjoying get better. The groups you've been enjoying get better. And anything with friends and groups and the eldest sibling. Jupiter through the 11th house can also be very good for getting your major goals and desires fulfilled. The major goals and desires fulfilled. It can be good for large sums of money as well. It's a very nice transit. It's a nice transit. And you can do side ventures with friends and side ventures separate from your daily career. You can do that. Saturn through the 11th house, your friends are going to cause problems. I don't care how good they are. They're all going to start to cause problems. They won't be huge problems, but they will be problematic enough that you have to decide, do I want to keep these friends or get rid of them? And some of them you might get rid of, some of them you might not. That's really the main thing that I look at with the 11th house of a transit. It's mainly about friends and groups. It can, when Saturn goes through the 11th house, it can make you think quite seriously about whether your major life goals are the ones you should be having, whether you're getting them fulfilled, what you can do to get them fulfilled, you can, you can be thinking about that. Eldest sibling could have some problems and such, things like that. When Uranus goes into the 11th house, you're going to get a whole new set of friends, a whole new set of groups. And your friends may act weird and strange and unstable. And your friends may get metaphysical and spiritual and new age. You'll meet all kinds of exciting new people, exciting new friends. But the friends you have, they could also start to act unstable or weird or strange, anything like that. And your major goals and desires could change during that period.
Yeah, because again, independence and instability and volatility and everything working.
That's right. That's right. Jupiter through the 12th house is a very nice transit spiritually. It's good for moksha. It's good for meditation. You'll start to have lots. It's only 1 year, but you'll have dreams at night. You'll have dreams at night that bring things up. It's a good. It's basically a good spiritual period. More than anything, it's good for the emotional, psychological health, and it's good for the. I always tell people meditate, do spiritual stuff, and if you want to travel to remote foreign countries means exotic, not Europe, not places close, but if you're over, I don't know, for you maybe it means the U.S. I don't know, but in India. But for us it means Asia, South America, India.
And for me, it could mean Peru.
Peru, yeah. Machu Picchu. Yeah.
The ancient civilizations, if you're talking about exotic, so the ancient civilizations of Peru, or be it Egypt, or that kind of a place.
Exactly. Now, it's also a really good time for getting bargains. The 12th house in the Hindu system is debts and expenses. So it's really good for bargains. You buy things at good prices. So I always tell people, look, the person may say, I'm selling you this, the price is firm. If Jupiter's going through your 12th house, even though they said the price is firm, say, would you go any lower? And they'll say, yeah, okay. Now with Saturn, it's the opposite. With Saturn, you're going to have debts and expenses, money going out for 2.5 years. So if your 12th house is Capricorn, Saturn's going to go in Capricorn 2020, 21, 22, you're going to start having debts and expenses. But when Jupiter goes in during those 12 months that I mentioned, that's the time when you can, you should do your buying then. Things won't be as expensive, you'd be okay. When Saturn's going through the...
Charities, could you also not be giving it to charities?
Yeah, you could be giving to charities, yeah. When Saturn's going through the 12th house, there could be sexual restrictions of sexual pleasures. There could be money problems. It's also, debts and expenses problem. It's also a good time for getting serious about meditation. So getting serious, some people get serious about their enlightenment, their higher consciousness. Some people, okay? It depends. Now, Saturn going through the 12th house could bring up emotional issues from early in life that have to be dealt with. Things that are causing, it's kind of like the 8th house, issues that are causing suffering, old memories and things like that may resurface for you to deal with, to go to therapy and things like that. Yeah. But mainly, I see Saturn through the 12th house more than anything as getting serious about enlightenment, and then having debts and expenses, and things like that. So Uranus through the 12th house. Uranus through the 12th house is one of the best times for therapy. What it does is, first of all, when you have that 7-year period of Uranus going through the 12th house, that's a time to write down your dreams at night. What's going to come up is the experiences that you had as a child, any kind of emotional traumas, any kind of things that are stuck in the subconscious mind. That's when they will come up to be dealt with, to go get therapy, to go get counseling. And that's when you remember things. It's all about the subconscious mind. That's mainly what it's about, I think. So it's a real good time spiritually. It's a real good time. It would be good for meditation and spiritual results, but it's the first time I think that you can start to remember emotional issues, things that are coloring your life with suffering. That's when they come up, and that's when you can remember things and deal with them. And because it's like
you can work them out of your system.
The 8th house and the 12th house are like that. They are hidden. They're hidden. They keep things hidden from view. Experiences that were suppressed as a child, things like that, or anything like that. Uranus is gonna bring those things up. So that's basically the 3 planets through the 12 houses, as I see them.
And there's so much more in James' book. You know, it's not just these 3 planets transiting through the 12 houses. It is the rest to Neptune and Pluto also. And what more? You have the aspect conjunction to deal with, and that makes a huge study. Don't miss it, because I know most of you just love it. And as ebook, it comes as affordable as just a $10.
And one thing about this is that in the Hindu system, you know, when I learned Indian astrology, I was very surprised that they weren't so concerned with the degrees. So if Jupiter's in the house and Venus is there, Jupiter's transiting Venus all year. If Saturn is in the 8th house and Uranus is transiting the 8th, Uranus is, you know, hitting it. But in the Western system, it's these aspects are within 1 degree on either side. So Saturn might hit one of your planets, and it could hit it for 3 months. Say you've got Moon in 9 degrees Taurus. When Saturn's in 8, 9, 10 degrees Taurus, there's an explanation for that from the Western system, which will tell you exactly what to expect. Versus in the Hindu system, it's simply, oh, Saturn's in the house with the Moon. I'll give you an example. I was talking about my kidney stones in the previous session, and I had a kidney stone 20 years ago, then I had one about 5 or 6 years ago. And one thing I knew was that there's not much that they can do for you in the hospital. They can give you, they can have you drinking water, they can put an IV, but they don't need to admit you to the hospital. But I got this kidney stone the day before Christmas, about 4 or 5 years ago, and I went to the hospital. They gave me painkillers. I went home feeling fine. But the next day, I was in great pain, so I went back to the hospital. It was a woman doctor. Now, Saturn was within 1 degree on either side of my moon. Okay, so I was having troubles with females. Saturn transiting the house where the moon is there could be mild difficulties with females for 2.5 years. But when it gets within 1 degree on either side, you're going to get really serious problems, right?
Right.
So I go back, and the lady says, "I'm admitting you." I said, "Why are you admitting me?" She says, "Well, you went home and you were in great pain. We have to admit you." I knew something was wrong with this, and I couldn't because I knew it was just going to give me a really large financial bill, okay? And I knew it wasn't necessary, but I was in pain. When I'm dealing with her, I'm in great pain. I just want to get rid of the pain. So I wind up with a $15,000 bill. Meanwhile, I hate hospitals. I do not like hospitals. I stayed overnight one night. I was really in pain, and I wanted to see my wife, right?
Right.
And my wife was at home dealing with, I forget what, dealing with the insurance companies or something. I had my friends there, but I wanted my wife there. Couldn't happen because Saturn was within 1 degree of the moon. It was transiting within 1 degree. So this is something that is in the Western system that is not in the Hindu system. I'll give you a really fascinating example, which is really frightening to me. The third house rules neighbors. And Saturn was coming to, I can't remember if it was a square or a conjunction, but Saturn was within the 1 degree point of that moon. and the moon rules the third house.
Right.
I have a neighbor who lives down the block. We've been here 25 years. We know him. He's always had bipolar depression. I go over next door to him. Some new people moved in, and I said, I'll wait till they're there a week, and I'll go say hello and say, if you need anything, I'm here. I go over there at the point where Saturn was coming to the exact strongest point of hitting the moon, and the moon rules the third house, which is neighbors. I'm talking to the women, the new neighbors, and the neighbor who has depression comes out of the house, says, "Hi, James, how you doing?" I said, "Great, how are you?" "Great." 3 hours later, we hear a massive scream, and I turned to my wife. I said, "Mark's gone." In other words, I knew from the scream because he'd tried to kill himself before. So the point is that happened when Saturn was within 1 degree of the third house ruler. And then I started to ask myself, how the heck did that happen? Does my life relate to when this guy is going to kill himself? It's bizarre. But this is the thing about using the Western system uses transits within a degree. They don't go by so much, oh, Jupiter's in the house with this planet all year long. No, they wait till the 1 degree point. And so that's what this book talks about, what happens when it gets within 1 degree.
Yeah, James, but I also see old that's a very beautiful thing that you've said, and that's also very scary, as you put in that so much on the planets, so much defining and pinpoint position that planets can give you within the degree, and and you can turn around and say that yes, this has happened, not to you, not to your child, not to your wife, to your neighbor of 25 years. That's
usually a person's death will be seen from their son, their daughter, their spouse. This was being seen from a neighbor. This was bizarre,
to say the least. But I have a very elderly and somebody who's been practicing Krishnamurti Paddhati for 40 years. She comes onto my channel mostly in Hindi, but she also puts in a lot of regard for degree. She keeps telling me all the time that if you do not see the degrees, you will get very loose results. And that coming from a person who's been teaching and studying KP astrology for 40 years. So I think over the period, experience also makes you realize all these things.
When I was studying in India, they were not talking about the degrees at all. I knew degrees from the Western system. But when we were talking about my career, and he said, look, Jupiter is aspecting the 10th ruler. He didn't say it's aspecting the 10th ruler to the exact degree, but I knew that from Western astrology. And that's when I knew, oh, that's why I have a spiritual career. Jupiter aspects the 10th ruler. It has to be spiritual. Okay?
It's a beautiful discussion we've had here, apart from the houses. Please do look into his book, as I have said earlier, and going through a beautiful transit that we have never ever discussed before of Uranus. I'm sure all of us are just after this entire interview, we are going into and finding where Uranus is located, so we can see if the transit really is working for us. Have a happy time and do get back. Thank you so much, James, for a beautiful and
pleasure. My pleasure.
Thank you so much.